Hey! Welcome to DnDTime Talks, the show where we discuss all things Dungeons and Dragons. I'm Pete.
And I'm Jeremy.
And we have two more people with us tonight. We have two guests with us. If you guys would like to introduce yourselves, we have Matty.
I am not Pete.
And I'm not Jeremy.
And of course, yes, up in the top left corner, we have Crowley. And I'm sure you all already know Crowley and Matty from the DnDTime community and Matty's own channel, MattyMorgs. But yeah, we're going to be talking about the Artificer tonight, and I'm excited to have such a big kind of group to talk with us here tonight.
Yeah, it's going to be very exciting. I think so.
I think so as well. And we're going to be getting into it in just a moment. This, for anyone who's unfamiliar, the Artificer is the brand new, just released. When did it come out, you guys? It's a couple weeks now.
Ago.
Oh, 6 days ago.
6 days.
About a week.
Even tighter.
On the 28th.
You were almost close.
I was in the ballpark. It was within.
I'm gonna give him the benefit of the almost close. That's all.
Well,
Yeah,
they
okay.
did delay it, so you were almost close.
All right, fair enough. Fair enough. It's
Man, we're giving you Pete a lot of shit.
Yeah, I can live with it. I'm used to it. It's really cool, regardless. And I'm excited to, like I said, I'm excited to talk about it. And as always, y'all in chat, hello. We got people hanging out. I see Max Meister, Bionic Shiba. Freynour subscribed with a tier 1 sub. They've subscribed for 12 months. Freynour, thank you very much. You got the fancy DnDTime little logo next to your name now, I see. MattyMorgs.
This MattyMorgs fellow.
This character, a subscription inception, boom, I'm subbing to the channel from within it. Matty, you've hacked into the mainframe, and also, yes, thank you so much.
You're very welcome. It's a pleasure to be here in several ways.
And Data is being a good cat. Good job, Data.
Oh, wow, Data's just up in his perch, just working.
He knows it's work time, and that means get paid with cat treats. But anyway, I'm very excited. This is going to be a really cool topic today. Have you guys all had a chance to really look at the Artificer a lot? Really give it a good couple read-throughs?
Yeah. We gave it a look on the channel. Did a bit of a narration of it, delved, and then we made 2 completely random characters just to see, reading the document's one thing, but then, if we think about an Artificer as a character and not just as a set of mechanics or stats, it was.
Yeah, I dig. Crowley, did you, now, I know that you were talking a little bit beforehand. You've played the old Artificer.
I played the old Artificer.
Yeah.
This Artificer seems better.
Well, we're jumping in. But...
There's a lot of ways in which we'll talk about what could be better as well. But yeah, before we proper get into it, I also want to just say, if y'all have comments, for one thing, there's a link to the Artificer on our Discord server. If you haven't gotten the chance to look at it, you can kind of follow along there. Jeremy, did you end up getting the chance to get it? Did you say that you were going to have it up on the stream?
Yeah,
as well?
We can move it up when we start to talk about it.
Okay,
and I
great.
just put another link in the Twitch chat, so you guys can access it there, no problem.
Excellent. So yeah, it'll also be kind of up on stream to read along, or if you want to read ahead, it's linked there where Jeremy just put it. And at the end of stream, we're going to be doing our usual Ask Pete and Jeremy segment, where you guys can also put questions in the Discord, and we'll answer them at the end of stream. And I think it's fair to say that tonight's segment could be additionally titled Ask Pete, Jeremy, Crowley, and Matty. So if you have questions for them as well, this is well, probably not once in a lifetime, because I'm sure this will happen again, but it is a rare opportunity.
Indeed, it's a diamond in the rough. Actually, that didn't make no sense. Anywho, let's talk about the Artificer. Let's just jump right into it before I just ramble into oblivion.
So, Jeremy, would you like to just tell people a little bit about like what the Artificer is for anyone who's completely unfamiliar with the class before we kind of get into some of the nitty gritty?
Well, that's actually the first thing I wanted to talk about, right? Is I think a lot of people have different ideas of what an artificer is. And that's, I think, the first place we need to like talk about when we're thinking about this class. So, like, for example, we'll start with me. What do I think an artificer is, and what do like I want out of an artificer class? I want to be able to make stuff. Mainly, I want to be able to make magic items and other magical, wondrous contraptions that are probably semi-permanent, and that can do that are basically little tools in their own right that can be used in creative and exotic and interesting ways that are kind of off the beaten path. I want a class that's going to give me tools to then make crazy things to use in crazy ways. Is that what you would say you think an artificer is as well, Pete?
I think that I'm of the very similar mindset as you. The kind of core thing that I expect out of an artificer is, like you said, the ability to make stuff. I think of that kind of almost tech wizard, and that's also very much susceptible to tone and how you decide to flavor your particular artificer. So I suppose there's a ton of ways you can do it, but I just picture someone that essentially can almost conjure magic items into existence, even though they're technically building them, at a speed that's a little bit too fast and that feels almost like magic. Like they're just, summoning a turret, for example, is one of the features that one of the subclasses gets.
Now, Farfel and Matty, do you two have any differing opinions, or are you pretty much on the same page with what an artificer?
I think I'm pretty much on the same page. The only other sort of thing I guess before 5e, I didn't have a good concept of what an artificer was, because in 4e, artificer was the I just cheat class, because we had an artificer in one of our parties, and we'd say, "Oh man, I need a +1," and he'd be just like, "Oh yeah, here you go," because the artificer
my
could
magical
just sort of
hacks.
do that in 4e, where it would just be like, "Oh, I need to hit. All right, yeah, do it. Good." And it's just so. With 5e, I'm like, okay, yeah, it makes items. I wish I had known that in 4e, but yeah, definitely the items and the tinkery kind of aspect.
Oh yeah, because it's interesting because we've gotten tinkery really out of you,
Mhm.
and I think I'm very much on that tinkery train. But Pete used the word, what was it, like inventor wizard?
Conjure, invent. I said both of those things.
Yeah.
But I think tinker is also a fair substitution.
I guess I don't personally immediately think wizard. What about you, Matty? Are you on the same board as these two?
Somewhat, having been steeped, if only by osmosis, though of course by my own actions, I've been really I've been involved in Magic the Gathering lore, and of course artifacts and artifice plays heavily into item creation and crafting and such. However, that is simply one foot is there, and the other foot is spanning over into Final Fantasy, where you have something similar called a machinist. And the machinists are more traditionally gunners, especially in Final Fantasy 14, where you're a gun class. And so it is still the creation process, but it's more of instead of the passive inventor, mad scientist, you're a gunner, and well, we're going to get into it, but that is brought up in both sidebars and kind of implied maybe through, if you want to play a more traditional game without the use of firearms, that'll get covered. So this met my expectations from both an MTG and a Final Fantasy approach, to compare it or to cement it into other iterations of what an artificer could be.
Yeah, and I'm seeing a lot of stuff. Chat is mentioning Swordco here saying a mage that creates and utilizes magical items to do stuff. Well, you pretty much hit the nail on the head on what this class is, Sword.
Yeah.
And then Max Meister is saying Heimerdinger. Fair enough. But yeah, I think we're all pretty much in the same boat for the most part. It's interesting that you have that Final Fantasy like gun or firearm based thing, because that's not something that really I have much exposure to. So I never really think that. Because it's interesting, they did away with that in this version versus the old one. I'm sure we'll talk more about the differences after. But anyway, let's read what the actual text says it is. Masters of unlocking magic in everyday objects, artificers are supreme inventors. They see magic as a complex system waiting to be decoded and controlled. Artificers use tools to channel arcane power, creating temporary and permanent magic objects. To cast a spell, an artificer could use alchemical supplies to create a potent elixir. Calligrapher's supplies to inscribe a sigil of power on an ally's armor, or tinkerer's tools to craft a temporary charm. The magic of artificers is tied to their tools and their talents. All right, I think for the most part that kind of hits it. We were all dancing around there. I'm interested though because there's a real big focus in this entire document about tools. You guys, I'm sure picked up on that.
Yeah.
Oh yes.
Besides, like the occasional us mentioning tinkering, we didn't mention tools at all in any of our kind of like what is an artificer mindsets.
I think for me at least, it wasn't part of the identity, but I mean, the association is still very strong. Like I would, if I was imagining, like the thing I always picture with an artificer is some kind of like magic wrench, essentially, which, Max Meister will go along with that. The Heimerdinger, archetype. I always picture just some kind of magic multi-tool that you're using for most of your constructions.
Yeah, I think so. I actually really like that idea that they broadened it to just any kind of tools, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And
I do as well.
They do have a couple little narrow options. I really like that it's broader, though. This is a very compared to like the old Artificer, which was very genericized. I don't know. To me, like this feels a little bit more like the Mad Inventor. Do you guys get that same vibe?
Maybe not Mad Inventor.
Yeah.
A savant, perhaps. Someone who. I guess just someone who can see the entire thing in front of them. Have any of you watched an anime movie called Summer Wars?
I have, yes.
The main character and his ability with math, that's what was coming to mind.
Yeah, I can absolutely see that. Great anime movie, by the way. Excellent movie. But yeah, I think I'm a little bit more on Maddie's camp, where it's more the genius, it feels like to me, than the person who's kind of out of their mind. And I think just like anything, that's also just a question of flavor and how you decide to end up building the character. I think you could use the tools that they give you in this class to make the mad scientist archetype if you wanted to.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Easily.
And I actually had a question. Oh, Crowley, go ahead.
I imagined someone actually very put together when I was reading this, like very almost like clean formal wear, not formal wear, but like a formal uniform, like knows what they're doing kind of vibe in my head, not the sort of mad, crazy hair Heimerdinger type.
That's one of the interesting things about this, right? Is like you can do a lot of different things.
Oh yeah.
As much as I said, my first impressions, my first thoughts, right, were the mad scientist. You could also absolutely make like a Bruce Wayne kind of character. You could make a Batman using this with all of the cool gadgets and gizmos and toys.
And I think that's the sign of a great subclass. Is that I know for me, I had like 2 or 3 pretty potent character concepts that I was starting to get just reading through the mechanics. And I think anytime that you read something, that's like the goal in design, is that you should create a skeleton that's inspiring and that makes you want to play it, which I think reveals what my kind of question is for all 3 of you. I liked it in reading through the Artificer. What did you guys think? Just like, did you guys get a good energy off of it? Did you like the Artificer? Like,
I liked it.
I think there's a lot to this class that makes it busier, or there's more to track. On the very first reading, and this is me being a little sleepy because I had some amazing pizza before that broadcast, and I was in the zone there. Because there's so much to do, there are so many things to track. It can feel, I don't want to say overwhelming. But there's definitely a lot of minutia to this class. A lot of things, especially because you're a very good concentrating caster. So you can maintain spells and you have all this other stuff. I don't want to get ahead of ourselves here, but there's a lot to track with this class and subclass.
That's exactly what I was thinking, Matty, when I was first reading it. Because there are a couple of weird things, and I'm going to come back to this because I am a stickler for this kind of shit. But there's a lot of points throughout this class where they kind of defy convention, where there's a convention established in 5e for how similar abilities and effects work. And this class does it differently for what doesn't appear to be any particular reason. And we'll get to those as they come up. But and that's I guess what I mean, right? You said there's a lot to focus on, a lot to remember, and because things don't follow that established convention all the time, that's kind of where I get that mad design, that concept for it. The design feels a little chaotic.
I do want to. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was gonna say in a good way. I don't know. It's weird.
Something else that popped out to me was, if you want to run a low fantasy world, you can do that in many with other classes, but this would completely break that, right? Because you're about magic items. You create them. You're a source of them.
It would take some heavy justification to play this class outside of.
Oh yeah. Even just outside of Eberron, it'd be a little weird.
Yeah, they cite Eberron as the source. It would be kind of like it'd be kind of like in D&D. Sorry, 1 second here.
Oh, good, Matty. Well, while Matty's handling what Matty needs to handle, what do you guys think about like the overall kind of power curve of this? Like at a glance, right? Is it too powerful, too weak? Where do you guys think it feels? Where do you think it would it feel like it stands, just as, you know, cursory glance?
Didn't feel too powerful to me.
Yeah, I think I was kind of playing around with trying to build something that I thought, looking at this, my first impression would be, you know, quote unquote optimal, the ideal way to play it. And looking at this and the tools that you get, it seems like you could become a pretty nasty AC tank, and also, you know, put out relatively consistent damage while doing that. But I didn't think it was in any way more effective than a lot of the comparable things out there. I'd say it was, you know, middle of the road. A lot of utility for sure.
Yeah, it felt very supporty.
Yeah, definitely.
Yes.
And
I'm sorry, real quick. What I was going to say before, it does bring its own flavor because of the magic items that are created, and it'd be something similar if there's a class that, you know, think of the old 3rd edition fighter. You get a feat every other level, and that's part of the class. It'd be kind of like trying to bring a character like that into, as you present D&D time, where feats are an option, but this class's existence necessitates feats. Maybe it's balanced for it, but it would require you to make sure you're considering if people like this exist in your world that can sort of spontaneously awaken inanimate objects, like a druid can awaken trees and bushes. You need to make sure that you have culturally, in your game world or your setting, you have accounted for this, that people like this exist. You know, if it's a one shot, then you're extremely powerful among the populace of everyone else. Or if we get into like a Full Metal Alchemist sort of a thing where there's an army of people who can do this, that changes the dynamic of your setting greatly.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. It can really have major impacts on this class can't just be put into a game,
Right.
unless they are literally the one character in the world that is an artificer. And that is like the core thing. It's like, I'm a traveler from another realm, right? You can do that. You can put that in any world. Doesn't matter. Put that in prehistoric Earth and fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, if this is a core thing in your world, that's big.
It's also, I imagine, from a more mechanical standpoint, like I would also definitely not want to give this class to a new player because there's just
Correct.
so much that it relies on. For example, just the creation of magic items. I mean, reading through the class description and looking at all of the different options they allow you to craft for magic items. I mean, the four of us vets, we look at that and we already kind of know, if not precisely, at least approximately what all of the magic items they're listed do. But having to like choose from all of those, if I was like new to D&D, that would be absolutely overwhelming to me.
Oh yeah, that'd be undoable.
And I can imagine like a new player making some choices because they were kind of forced into a corner, and either making something that ends up being like really weak and unsatisfying, or just kind of confusing, and they end up like regretting a lot of early character choices, things like that. So this is definitely, I would say, like a dangerous one to give a campaign, unless you like really trust the players and their like experience with the mechanics of 5e.
I completely agree. This is a class designed for veteran players, and
Yeah.
probably
Oh, yeah.
also veteran players of previous editions. This is like more than any of the subclasses that they've released since the beginning. I feel like this one is specifically catering to those 3.5 holdouts who are like, we don't want to go to 5e. It's like, are you sure? You're sure? Look what we can do. It. We can make you happy too, bud.
What if you can make a bag of holding at level 2?
Yeah, really. So actually, that's interesting you mentioned that, right? Because we briefly mentioned overall power level, and the consensus was it's probably moderate, if not a little low. And it's interesting because I was thinking about that, and this class actually reminds me a lot, and it's power like leveling. If it's leveling progression and power scaling of the Warlock, actually, right? Because it's got three, like the Warlock. There's not just you pick a subclass, you get all stuff to the subclass that's done. The Artificer you put together like a puzzle, like the Warlock.
Yeah.
And that's a very bizarre combination where I think this could change a lot of stuff. Like, I mean, there are the infusions, which are huge. Obviously, making magic items, it's the huge power boost for this class. There's the actual class abilities, which I don't know, tend not to, I think, be too powerful. They're kind of like a Warlock pact, maybe. And then there are the actual subclass options, which are pretty impactful, I think.
Oh, for sure.
And trying to balance all that's going to be weird. I'm mostly concerned about how the infusions are going to unbalance or could unbalance other classes. I mean, that's before we like start ripping through the actual class. I know we're almost half an hour in. We haven't gotten to that yet, but I'm wondering, was there any like red flags that jumped out to you three as other dungeon masters, right? As like, ooh, this could be weird. I don't know how I feel about how this is gonna work. Because for me, it was the idea of the infusion.
The thing that I wasn't crazy about, I didn't have too much issue with the infusions. Yeah. I wasn't crazy about the alchemist's homunculus, which is because I thought there was some funky stuff there involving odd ordering on the help action that they gave it, which we can come back to when we're talking about it. Which was
defy convention.
Yeah, that was a funky mechanic that they put in there. But the infusion system, I didn't have too much issue with.
Plus one armor. I hate plus one armor.
I mean,
build plus one armor into a class. Yeah.
You know that plus one armor.
It's just plus one armor. I don't know.
It's plus one armor
plus two
and cloak of protection, and then your ring of protection that you create, and then your shield of faith, and then your shield spell for at level 14 you're 25 with a reach of 30 AC,
and you're of Warforged, so my AC is 70.
But then you also dipped into fighter for the defensive fighting style, but that's all aside the point.
Anyway, we're rambling.
Yeah,
let's start actually, unless does anyone else to add to that? Sorry.
Well, I'm also interested in what your issue with the with that feature is. Yeah,
it's the defensive stuff for me.
Okay.
Or are you talking to Crowley or me?
I was talking to you. What your problem with the infusions were?
Sorry, go ahead.
The problem I have with the infusions, right, is let's scroll down to them for a minute. And this kind of feels like I'm interested in how load bearing the infusions are for the power of the class. Because with Warlock, right, they have their Eldritch Invocation. And the fact of the matter is there are the correct Eldritch Invocations and there are the wrong ones. And if you pick the wrong ones, you're going to be weak. And if you pick the right ones, you're going to be overpowered. And that's just the fact of the matter of the Warlock. There's some exception now, a little bit, with the Celestial Warlock and the Hexblade, giving you some more consistent options if you don't pick the Eldritch Blast infusions. I'm worrying at how load-bearing these infusions are going to be for the class, right? Is this class going to be weak if you don't pick Enhanced Defense as one of your infusions? Is this going to be weak if you don't pick Radiant Weapon as one of your infusions? What if I want Boots of the Winding Path because it's cooler and more fun? Or the many-handed pouch?
What you're getting at is I think we could even take one step further back and see that a bottleneck for a player or a DM with this is that as many people are like, oh, well, you're playing the cleric, well, you're the healer. Well, 5th ed clerics can do a lot of different things than just heal. With this class, you can never not have an option to do something, whether it's role play, whether it's battle, whether it's casting, whether it's crafting. You will never not have something that you can do, and because of that, you can almost get drowned in choices, where you also may, because you're such a generalist, others may specialize, and so you become the bottleneck to the party. Because you're doing all this stuff, you're the one who creates this, you're the one who crafts, you're the one who casts, and therefore, many times I think you will be bottlenecked where you want to take those cool, the boot ability that kind of teleports you back, right? You can run forward and kind of teleport back to a starting point along your movement. You want to do that because it's cool and thematic, but everyone at your table says, I want magic weapons, I want magic armor, and you really don't have a choice. So you're not playing your character, you're playing everyone else's character. Which, if you want to play support, this is obviously, like, this is the hands down choice. If you're organized and you can manage your time and know your actions and spells, I think this can be great. This is an advanced class. Otherwise, I think a lot of time can be lost at the tabletop, and the enjoyment could be infringed because you are going to be expected to take magic armor, magic weapon, bag of holding, all this stuff that's bread and butter for every campaign, and suddenly you're not playing your character, you're playing like the party's sugar daddy.
Well, and taking a step back, and I'm sorry, Pete, I know you and Crowley have stuff to say here. I didn't necessarily even mean that. I meant, like, at level 4, you get an ability score up. If you take the Linguist feat instead of a +2 to your primary ability score, you are just weaker. And the game is designed around you getting those ability score ups to make you stronger. So if you're level 4 as I take the Linguist feat, you're going to be gimped for 4 levels, compared to a party that took that ability score up or a relevant combat feat. I'm worried. I don't know how load-bearing these are for this class. And that's kind of what I'm getting at. Without a lot of playtesting, I don't know. That's my concern.
My instinct is that they are pretty heavily load-bearing, but at the same time, I think there's a lot of them that it's like a very easy course correct, where even if you make kind of a quote-unquote suboptimal choice, like say those boots, and then further down the line, you're like, oh, well, I'm not hitting like a truck. Well, I'll just make a Gauntlets of Ogre Power and jump my strength up all of a sudden from 10 to 19. So there's a lot of like flexibility, I think, in kind of catching up with power that doesn't necessarily stack on top of each other, that I think would mitigate some of that. But, it's also just, that'll something that will have to come out in play tests too, because that's so hard to read just from the class.
Yeah.
The other thing is, you don't always want to look at what's happening at level 20, but by level 20, you do know at all the infusions. You have all of them. If you want to take every infusion once, you have all of them by level 20. But the other thing is, you also only have a limited number of infusions.
Yeah.
Like a limited number of items to infuse. I get the feeling the intent is less to give your party stuff and more to use it for yourself. Because
that's the vibe I got too.
And so, I don't know. I don't foresee it being as
I don't know,
bottlenecking as you guys are worried about. Maybe I'm wrong.
Once you make a bag of holding, you can never destroy that bag of holding, or your party will hate you. There'll be a fight at the table.
Yeah, so that actually brings up my one issue with one of my major issues with the class is I don't like the replicate magic item infusion.
Interesting. Okay.
Because that was the old Artificer, and I didn't like it there either. that whole infusion was the first Artificer iteration, and I think there were problems with that because you got to take the bag of holding. Like, you're an asshole if you take an alchemy jug at level 2.
It's true.
But I want mayonnaise.
I know. Who doesn't want mayonnaise? I would take it for the mayonnaise, but I'm an asshole.
And maybe that's the kind of thing that, like, that's like the dangerous design where you can see party conflicts emerging in class design, but at the same time, anything that's built on that kind of, like, the social implications of what your mechanics are, that stuff can also be corrected well by, like, a skilled GM who sees that that you've just been kind of, like, relegated to having your bag of holding all the time, and then kind of just, adjust and say, oh, you guys find a bag of holding. You don't have to do this anymore because now your party just has one. You can kind of...
Sorry, go ahead.
And you can change, the game around as a result of it.
You're absolutely right. The problem is 5th edition is not designed for the skilled GM. Like, it is designed to be as approachable and easy for anyone to pick up and play and run. And I feel like you're right. Like, a skilled GM can fix that no problem. That's not a problem. But, like, man, a lot of GMs won't. Like, won't even know, like, realize it's an issue. Like, I think Goggles of Night, and the cool thing about that, right, is, if your Artificer doesn't have dark vision, they can get it. That also means if anyone in your party has dark vision, you're making Goggles of Night doesn't have dark vision. You're making Goggles of Night till they do. And that sucks.
Maybe a quick fix as a recommendation to all GMs. Maybe some kind of just talk with your... And in the end, this comes into the category what we're talking about before. Like, I do not recommend this class for the inexperienced or the faint of heart. You definitely want to know what you're getting into when you put this, because it's just, there's so many implications that go along with it that are a lot more than what's written on the page. So it's definitely a dangerous one. But I think, like, if you're playing the selfish, I'm forgetting the name, Artificer, I think it could be a lot of fun to play that, and I think it would be a rewarding class if you don't have to worry about, like, your party. And maybe you don't have to worry about it because the class is so complicated. Your party will never probably understand that you're not giving them Goggles of Night.
Mm-hmm. I see. Either I'm being trolled or...
Yeah.
Okay. Blood is reading basic poison as basic potion.
I assume,
Silly Blood. Anyway, we've talked a lot about these infusions, but we haven't actually gone through the top of the class. I just jumped right to here. I'm sorry, guys. Let's talk about the basic kind of the beginning. Let's walk through the Artificer a little bit. So one of the things I really love about this doc is a lot of cool lore in it, but more than that, they've taken a different approach, right? And they've given a lot of little sidebars of how you can reflavor things in the class they don't do for other classes, and that's just really neat.
Yeah, I thought that was smart.
Yeah, for something as strange as this, I really appreciated that. So let's see, a D8 hit dice, pretty beefy for a caster. Light armor, medium armor, shields.
Well, they're not really a full caster.
You're right, but for not a martial fighter, I guess it could be a martial fighter.
It could be. It gives you extra attack, basically.
But Virgo's pretty good hit die.
Mm-hmm.
The D8.
Yeah.
Acceptable hit die, we'll say. Medium armor, light armor, shields, pretty good if you want to get up in the grill. Simple weapons, hand crossbow, heavy crossbows. Okay. A bunch of tool proficiencies. Nice. Constitution and intelligence saving throws. Oh, that con saving throw, baby. We love those.
Yep. Take a look. If you take a look at their spell list too, you can see that they're kind of they're good for it. Lots of concentration spells, and whether you want to consider it a feat tax or not, like you were talking about, Jeremy. Taking the warcaster. Some people might say you got to take this, so that way your spells will never go down ever.
That's true, but they also have... Oh, actually, even more so because they have so few spell slots. But anyway, we get to their first core feature, magical tinkering. And I could... Should I just read this, or should we just kind of just talk about it?
Well, before we do, I actually even want to jump back because my
Oh,
first
geez, we've gone
issue
too far.
comes. My first issue comes even before magical tinkering, and that is I would really have liked them to had I don't know if necessarily a full martial weapon proficiency, but a couple of weapon proficiencies, because it seems to me like it would be really fun to play this class as like a melee in your face, like you're designed to make magic weapons, and like
Yeah.
playing them, it never even occurred to me, like the whole time I just imagined playing this with like a big forge hammer and like playing as that kind of like upfront dwarf, and I really wanted to have that realized like in your weapon proficiencies, but they only gave you that ranged kind of long distance battle, which implies that they want you to maybe second stat dex, but strength felt really cool to me, and I was odd that it wasn't in the class.
Well, let's hold everything, because simple weapons doesn't mean strength isn't in there. It just
This is
limited
true.
to a D6 instead of a D8 die, which isn't that big a deal, to be frank. I think, I don't know.
In my heart of hearts, it's a big deal.
I think they went. Anyway, no. My comment was going to take a whole different direction about weapons in 5th edition, but I feel
give you hammers.
a lot of players, I feel like, would feel bad taking a D6 weapon over a D8 because the D8 is the optimal weapon, and I totally understand that.
Yeah, anyway, hammer proficiency felt like it would have been right to me, and I don't think it affects the balance of the class all that much.
Oh, at all.
Yeah. Anyway, that's my only comment on that. If we want to go to magical tinkering, and maybe just summarize roughly what it does.
Yeah, so magical tinkering is a feature that the Artificer gets at level 1. So this is their core, like, I get to tinker with stuff. I get to make wondrous little objects. And you can make a number of these equal to your intelligence modifier, and they last forever or until they're destroyed, or you make more than your intelligence modifier, in which case the first one that you made goes. So what the objects are, they are an object that sheds bright light in a 5-foot radius and dim light for additional 5, like a candle. An object that, whenever tapped by a creature, can emit a recorded message that can be heard up to 10 feet away, and you can give the message up to 6 seconds. And yeah, so like a tape recorder, an object that continuously emits the sound of your choice, a non-verbal sound, wind, waves, chirping, or whatever, that can be heard up to 10 feet away, or an object that, what was that?
Or an odor.
Yeah, or an odor, sorry. Or a static visual effect that appears on the object's surface, like a picture or up to 25 words of text, lines, shapes, or any mixture of these elements.
So
that's basically the gist of it.
That's sort of your Artificer prestidigitation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's several half cantrips.
You see, that's exactly how I feel. This feels just like prestidigitation or thaumaturgy, but with that kind of Artificer twist that the stuff lasts until you make too many. Right?
Which is cool. I was actually, like, one of the first things I thought when I was reading this, I pictured that, like, recording a message thing, and I pictured Artificers going around making literal messages in a bottle, where they just, like, have a corked bottle, and then you, like, uncork it and the sound comes out. There's lots of, I think, really creative stuff you could do with this.
Tons of RP, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, my first thought, wind, waves. Oh, excellent. I go to sleep. All right. I take out my little stone of it sounds just like the beach, and I relax. And, they got the little white noise machine.
Or you can make a stink bomb.
Jesus. Yep. So, okay, one of the things that bothered the hell out of me about this first instance of them totally going off convention, why is it intelligence modifier? Like, what's the reasoning for it instead of up to 3, like prestidigitation or thaumaturgy?
Because it's not a cantrip. Most class abilities scale off of a modifier, but thaumaturgy and prestidigitation are cantrips. This is not a cantrip.
But it functions just like it.
Oh, yeah.
It functions just
100%.
like a cantrip. So, I guess for me, that's not a good enough reason. But I get what you're saying.
Yeah, I was actually with Crowley on that. It felt pretty natural in there, honestly, to me.
I completely disagree.
I noticed it, but then was like, yeah, that makes sense to me. I didn't have any issue with it.
Well, because my first thought was like, all right, why is this veering off of thaumaturgy and prestidigitation? And then my second thought is, well, maybe it's because they want the Artificer to be able to use it more.
Mm-hmm.
But in that case, all right, so you don't get a 20 and int till level 8, assuming standard array kind of deal, and an optimal class for that matter. And so it's just like, well, you have to be level 8 before you get 5 of them, which is like meaningfully more than 3. So even like just being able to have more just didn't feel like enough. I don't know. Personally, I would like this being even more than it is. I think this would be cooler at just being like 6 or 7 of these. These are the fun little trinkets that I love. I really love this ability. But I just don't
I could
understand why
definitely
it's
be.
got this weird limiter on it.
I would
me.
actually prefer more. I think as well.
Yeah, like just 6 or 8. I mean, you don't want to go too crazy, but I think 6 would be a really good number for this.
Mm-hmm.
Just like you have a bunch of little trinkets. You don't feel bad giving your party members each little candles, right?
Yeah.
Whereas you can feel really bad giving away those candles at level 1 and like, all my fun things are gone. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I would have no problem if they decided to give it more, but I also don't necessarily mind that they didn't either way. But
Fair enough.
and also, they get spellcasting at level 1. Oh, Matty, yeah, please.
No, I'm following along.
Matty has no strong feelings one way or the other.
Fair.
No, I'm fine. I'm fine with it, kind of slowly growing with you. Is that's the Artificer is meant to do that. You start out, you make some simple stuff, and as you level up, you get more cantrips and or more quasi cantrips. Your score increases. You can do more of the tinkering until finally you've just sort of assembled yourself as this, as this paragon of invention.
I mean, I guess I understand. It just still doesn't feel like quite enough to me. What else do they get? They get cantrips at level 1.
Yeah, they get spellcasting at level 1, which is odd for the half-caster, but makes sense for the Artificer, I think.
Well, I mean, yeah.
So let's see. The spellcasting table here. So yeah, at level 1, you know what you get. You get 2 spell slots, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you know all Artificer spells, correct?
They prepare.
They prepare.
So
they're very much like a paladin in that regard.
I really like that. There's a huge amount of versatility in this class that like I feel like actually rivals the wizard, which is great because that's what your point is here. We should talk a little bit about these spells. Were there any that like stood out to you as like, oh, that's interesting?
Well, for one thing, I think one spell that's definitely worth talking about is Arcane Weapon, because they put together and added a new spell in this Unearthed Arcana specifically for the Artificer, which, to summarize it very quickly, I don't want to spend time because we're already getting really close to the end, talking about, but basically it is sort of a hunter's mark that instead of putting it on an enemy, you put it on your own weapon, and it adds an extra 1d6 of an elemental damage type. And it lasts for an hour. It's a bonus action to cast like Hunter's Mark. It's concentration like Hunter's Mark. And it's cool, and I like it. And it definitely kind of pushes you again in that direction of, being kind of this hybrid. It pushes you more in that martial direction if you want to go that path.
Mm-hmm.
No, I like that item. I like that spell a lot.
That spell, yeah.
I also really like that it's an Artificer spell. It's not a wizard spell. And as long as they don't reprint it in any book and call it a wizard spell, I'm going to be super happy with it.
Yeah, that would be spooky
to see that end up on the wizard spell list, because it just feels so right as like an Artificer spell.
I do want to point out too that they are ritual casters, so they're half casters with cantrips and rituals.
Mm-hmm.
If you really want to maximize your spell casting,
that's true.
Also, they get grease, which I thought was hilarious, and I can already picture. Your little, like, I don't know, grease robot, your wand of grease, whatever it is that you decide to flavor it as. It feels so on the money.
Oh yeah, and I mean they got some. What's really weird is at second level they get the magic weapon spell. Why would you ever cast magic weapon if you have arcane weapon? I mean, I guess if you need the +1 to hit, maybe.
On somebody else's.
But you're already concentrating on your arcane weapon.
Yeah, you can
It's
give.
a little funky.
Wait,
I mean,
can
I
you
get
give
it.
arcane weapon to someone else?
For me, it's very much why
Yeah,
would you
it's a
cast
weapon.
magic weapon to begin with anyway?
You're fighting a ghost.
That's
You need to kill the ghost.
that's
But anyway,
true, I suppose.
Okay.
they have a really cool bunch of abilities on here. They got healing word. I'm sorry, cure wounds. They don't have healing word. They got cure wounds. They have sanctuary. They got shield of faith. Some of those classic and really potent
Yep, Shield of Faith is a
divine
monster.
abilities.
Mhm.
And then they also have arcane weapon, right? And grease and some of those more classic supporty features. I mean, heat metal is a pretty good one too.
One that really interested me is that they get revivify. They get access to some of the comeback from the dead, and if you go the alchemist route, you get raised dead.
Well, the original Artificer also got revivify, but it seemed it seemed like it was almost supposed to be used for your robo companion that you got on the original Artificer.
I'm wondering if that's almost like an oversight.
Maybe
Switching over.
Although healing, it sort of seems in line, and I like the defibrillator idea.
Well,
or just hammering someone's chest. Live!
One of the things I really like about these spell lists, as being half casters as they are, there's not a lot of damaging spells on here, which is good because, man, damaging spells can feel really bad as a half caster when you get it 4 levels after the full caster. Even Fireball does not feel good when you get it at level 11. Which is saying something.
There really aren't a lot. I hadn't really thought about that.
Bigby's hand.
Bigby's hand and heat metal?
Well, heat metal is just sick.
Yeah. But Bigby's hand, and Bigby's hand is its own sort of thing in a way.
They did a good job of picking out spells that scale very well.
Well, scale well, and that aren't just I use once and do damage.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of these spells are value over time spells, and that's
and well, really then your use once.
Huh?
As for your use once too, there's things like dispel magic. That's always good, regardless.
Very good.
Yeah.
The damaging spells are gonna really be flavored with your subclass more than the basic artifact.
And because we've already talked about infuse item a little bit, let's talk about some of these subclasses a little bit before we go into the details on what they do. Which one were you leaning towards? Which one did you guys like more?
Well, okay. I liked the Alchemist personally.
Ooh.
But I actually really like both of them, but I like the Alchemist, I think, more.
Crowley, Matty? If you had to pick.
I really like the wand aesthetic of the
I did.
So cool.
I did as well.
But I think I'd go Artillerist. The turret doesn't call to me as much as the homunculus, but the wands are pretty cool.
It was difficult for me to decide. We ended up making one of each on the stream, and I liked them. I think that the Artillerist is you have even more options. It's more complex to run because you are playing sort of chess with the turrets and just all the things that can happen with them. And of course, it's making me recall machinists again from Final Fantasy, especially in 14, where you have a turret as a support for your own weapon damage. The Alchemist, I don't know if I really got the feel that an alchemist was an alchemist as I imagine them traditionally.
I got that vibe as well.
So the Artillerist really made sense with the mechanics and the name. The Alchemist, I like the effects of the Alchemist. I don't know if I really got the vibe that it is an alchemist as I would have imagined it to be.
Yeah,
I agree. Like I said, this one for me felt like the Mad Scientist entirely because of its core feature, the Alchemist.
Yeah, Raised Dead. Homunculus is if you trace the name back, that's the dwarf in the bottle. It's like this creation of life, and so you're getting that, but it's just you get the potions and such. I don't know. It just something was slightly off. I don't mind it. It's just not Artillerist. It definitely is an Artillerist. Alchemist is
the guy that likes making potions.
rather than going like too far into any like specific focuses here, let's just focus on like the two core features that each of these classes are going to get. First, their crafting.
Yeah.
For both the alchemist and the artillerist, they can craft items at 1/4 of the normal time and half the normal cost. And the item they can craft, the item categories are based on what they different are. So like for the alchemist, they can make potions at 1/4 of the time and half the cost. And for the artillerist, it's wands. And man,
Big difference in power there.
Yeah, well, yeah, man, holy the wands are busted.
Wands are really good.
Wands are very, very good magic items.
Yeah.
So that is a really powerful long-term deal. Yet at the same time, I don't know. I feel like potions like especially kind of suck because they cost so much for their single use. Like a potion of Storm Giant Strength it's a legendary item, right? It costs 25,000 gold. And yeah, you're paying 12,000 gold for a 29 strength for an hour.
Is that
like
are consumables treated differently in crafting in the downtime activity? I don't actually know.
Oh, actually, they might not.
So if
Oh,
yeah.
I hope they are. But yeah, that's just.
Oh, that was you assuming they were. Okay, that's not great. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not even positive. Oh.
And in the same regard, the thing about the potions, it feels bad in comparison if it was just that. Like if you didn't have to look at the wands side by side, you're like, oh, cool, I can craft potions way easier. But it's like seeing like how much better the wands kind of are with their more permanent effects that becomes a little feels a little bit bad. But the wands also, in terms of when I was talking before about things that inspired me, the wands inspired me. Like when I was thinking of what character I would want to make if I was to roll up an Artificer right now, I pictured just a guy that was walking around just covered in wands, just a bandolier of wands, each of them like labeled individually, that he has like every spell is just cast through a unique wand. Did you guys like have anything like that in reading these where you had just like a very visceral like character idea, even if it was just kind of something basic like that?
I mean, you all have the image, right, of like the dude who's wearing the trench coat. They open it up and they have all the watches for sale. It's that, but wands. It's just like, yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure. One in each hand.
If you're familiar with the anime Trigun, there's a character there named Meryl Strife, and Meryl has a particular cape that is just filled with one-time use items. Now, whether they're potions or wands, I kind of got that impression, but it was similar, right? The guy comes rolling up into town, and then he's almost like the merchant, even from RE4. Like, what are you buying? What are you selling? stranger.
I mean, even like if you look at like Overwatch, right? Like Reaper, he takes his 2 shots, throws his guns away. Is that what the wand just
so wasteful?
The wands are just going everywhere. Like, I don't know. I think it'd be really cool. I mean, that's very wasteful. You're absolutely. Overwatch is bad for the environment, folks. You heard it here first.
I really want
specifically Reaper.
Well, I would really love it if Overwatch added a mod, or someone made a mod for Overwatch where the guns are just on the ground permanently and they have like physics, so you can just see the empty guns just in a trail behind him.
So I want to just mention one thing real quick, and that is we were talking all about how the artillerist's wands, like wand of fireballs, wand of lightning bolts, wand of binding, are so much more powerful than the potions. But you have to realize it's going to take a while to get to there, even at the 1/4 time and half cost. It's going to take a long time to make those. Yeah. Whereas until that point, the alchemist is going to be the party's best friend. Oh yeah, I made 12 healing potions during that last week of downtime, and everyone's like, "We love you."
The healing potions aspect can't be underestimated. When you can make 25 gold regular healing potions or whatever, that's pretty good.
Actually, wait, it's a 1/4, right?
Yeah,
it's even cheaper than that.
No, a 1/4 of the speed of the time.
Oh, okay. What's the cost?
I think it's half cost.
Oh, so it'd be 12 and 5, because I think potions are already half cost if you're crafting them, and then so it'd be half again.
I don't remember. If they are, yeah, regardless. It's like crazy. It's very
good either way.
So anyway, we talked a little about this crafting. Let's talk about first the alchemical homunculus, and then we'll talk about the turrets that define the artillerist. So the alchemist gets their alchemical homunculus, and you can decide entirely what it looks like. The only stipulation is that it has wings and it's tiny. So the examples I give are mechanical birds, or a vial with wings, or like a little dancing cauldron, or something like that. And here's another place where it defies convention. In combat, the homunculus shares your initiative count, but takes its turn immediately after yours. Why not just treat it like a familiar? Like just act, or I guess, like, either going on its own turn, or I mean, I don't know. There's just already, this is just weird to do that another third way.
I think it would have been even more complex with more options and more things to track if you had 2 separate initiatives.
Well, why don't you just say it just goes on your turn? There are already things that say that, right? Like, that's why I just get a little confused.
Maybe for the purposes of, I don't know, like beginning a turn, end a turn stuff.
Yeah, the only thing I could think of is that they didn't want you to use, like, it gives it the ability to use the help action, and then the impression I got is that they didn't want you to use it to help yourself, which felt like a weird implementation. Like, it would be better to just not give them the help action if that's what you're going to do with it, because I feel like most people would, if you can't use the help action on themselves, would rather just use one of the other abilities of it anyway. It's a little funky, but I mean, it's a quibble.
It's really trying to enforce that, like, you're supporting for your team by making some weird mechanics that prevent you from physically being able to help yourself, which really still can do if you're just doing one thing. You just ready your action until the homunculus' turn, so the homunculus can help you, and then...
I was thinking that too.
It's just weird. Like, there's not a lot of reason I don't see for this, and it's at current execution.
And then it gets a few abilities, and they're all, utility, all buffs. You can, give someone a little flying speed. You can give someone inspiration, some temporary hit points. The inspiration feature is very oddly worded.
I wanted to talk about that one.
Yeah, if you want to. We're getting tight though.
I mean, if we run a little over, is that all right with you guys?
Matty, are you? Do you have a little
I'm fine.
time?
Yep, I'm happy being here. I'm on.
Excellent.
I'm here with you all, so we'll do what you want to do here.
So the inspiration feature really bothered me. They can use this 3 times per day, and the feature gives one creature advantage on a number of ability checks in the next hour equal to your intelligence modifier, and they can just choose what they are. Wow, that feels...
Rip your dungeon as a DM.
Oh, yeah, right? Or, fuck, God forbid we're doing puzzles, or like a social encounter, or you going shopping. It's like, oh, we got to bring the alchemist to haggle.
Now, I would say I might be willing to meet halfway, because it does say the target feels giddy and effective if they have some sort of like we happy few, like absurd Joker smile as an aspect of this application. So like their face kind of turns white, and then they get this big, like super, like almost like tetanus lockjaw grin going on, and so it's clear that they're under the effects of something, maybe for a little bit of fun. But yeah, that one is kind of
I like the idea that, because how it describes it is like one of the options that, or one of the possible descriptions it gives for this is, a little vial with wings, and like to do this, you just gotta grab the vial and drink out of it.
Well,
come here, you little bastard.
I don't know. I think you're right, Matty. The problem is, like, at that point, you're creating rules that actually aren't in the rules. I think that would be a cool, like, counterpoint to it, right? But
also, some of the phrasing there is funky. Like, gaining advantage on certain ability checks. And, like, I read that, like, 3 times, and then just said, I'm just going to read the whole feature. And then I got it once I got through it. But certain ability checks is...
that whole spiel is just like, what the fuck? I don't know. That ability in particular just feels totally off to me in terms of its power level and just how it works in the context of 5e.
Yeah, it's like, for one thing, it's just so much better than the Bard.
Yeah. Trash is a Bard.
Your 1 inspiration is worth all of theirs, and you can do it 3 times. But
Yeah.
again, or I guess, and it scales at a higher level, and there's, some arguments that could be made there. But
the last thing before I move away from the homunculus, I really like how they just fixed the Beastmaster Ranger in this homunculus. Oh, HP 5 times your level. Really, you got to just one up the Beastmaster. With Beastmaster, it's 4 times level HP,
and it's a glass vial, not like a savage primordial beast.
Yeah, right. And then Might of the Master. That is such just an easy fix to. All of the following numbers increase by 1 when your proficiency bonus increases by 1. The homunculus' skill bonuses and the bonuses to hit and damage of its attack rolls. Like, perfect. Ta-da! Why does the Beastmaster not just have these things? I mean, it has like a kind of a version of that, but
don't get me started on the Beastmaster.
I made a homebrew class once that had a bodyguard that used that mechanic. It's actually the exact same as the 5 health, and then they just scaled your proficiency bonus. It just makes sense.
I don't know. At this point, it's just rude at this point. Just another, hey, we fixed the Beastmaster, but not for the Beastmaster.
Just fix the Beastmaster.
Well, moving along, let's talk about the Artillerist, because we're gonna get hooked up on the Beastmaster now. The Artillerist gets the Arcane Turret.
Yeah.
These are very interesting.
I like the turret a lot more than I liked the homunculus. Personal taste, I'm sure, is a factor in there, as I just like the aesthetic of, the more mechanical side of artificery, perhaps more than the chemical side. So I'm sure there's some bias there. But to kind of, fair enough. To sum it up a little bit, basically you get a turret. It can walk around and move. It has the same kind of hit point scaling as the homunculus, although it has a big AC. It has an 18 armored class, which was interesting. And basically you can, use a bonus action to have it move around, and then of a speed of 15 feet, and then use use its primary ability. And when you summon the turret, you get to pick what that ability is, and they give you 3 options. One's a flamethrower that does like a cone of damage. One's a single target spell attack that shoots 1 big missile that hits for 2d8 force damage, actually, and knocks you back. And then the other one's kind of like the way they describe it is it emits a burst of positive energy. Yeah, it's a shield, and grants temporary hit points to people near it.
So my first thought when I looked at these was like, oh man, these are weaker than the homunculus. But they really aren't. Especially Defender's really powerful.
Well, I think the flamethrower is not great.
I didn't think that, but it is a cone, right?
Yeah.
It's what is it? Sacred weapon, or
but it's like a burning hands cone, which isn't.
Yeah.
It's not big, but it's not. I don't know.
It's situational.
Every turn, no concentration.
Yeah.
I think it's worse than the Defender, but maybe that should have plus your intelligence modifier on the damage.
And the Force Ballista feels,
I think that actually feels pretty okay.
Yeah, I think it feels good. I think, 2d8, you're making like your extra attack weapon attack because you get that feature at level 5, and you're doing as a bonus action the extra 2d8 from the Force Ballista every turn. I think you're putting out some pretty consistent damage with this subclass build.
Yeah.
I believe so. And once more, as a DM, either have some sort of like a minute or 2 minute sand timer, because the Artificer, especially the Artillerist, you have so many options with all your wands, which can be effectively extra cantrips. You have your turrets, especially when you get 2 turrets. This can be a huge slowdown in a combat situation. And if I can add on to the flamethrower, it itself a 15-foot cone of 1d8 fire. That may not necessarily be the most impressive, but remember that you are locking down 9 squares around you. So if you stick close to the turret as the Artificer, and you yourself have like a heavy, you have the heavy crossbow or whatever, you're standing next to it, and it's gonna deter people from getting into melee, because all that turret has to do, like it's protecting. The cone is that many squares, but really, if you think about it, every 3 squares all the way around the one in which it's centered is covered by the flamethrower effectively. And also, don't forget, it's a medium-sized turret, meaning that you might be able to get some sort of cover as the Artificer if you stand behind it in comparison to the enemy.
Well, if you're a halfling, you can actually take the hide action to hide behind your turret.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There's that as well. And depending on your DM, because it is a threatening, medium-sized thing, could that count as as advantage for purposes of sneak attack? But there's a lot you can do because the turret is meant to be a player on the board. It should be more than just a damage source.
Oh yeah, I mean it's also a pile of HP. One of the things I really liked about both this and the homunculus is for one spell slot you can make a new one. Done. You get one free, and then you can get it back. And I really, 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 really like that.
I agree.
I cannot underscore just how much it sucks to have your core class feature die, and it
makes sense flavor. Like it's a little harder to justify, like for the faster getting your beast back, but for this, it's just like, oh yeah, of course, you just make it again.
I really like Roger Twi. Downside, the turret just keeps announcing exterminate. I also like how you get more of these turrets as you level up. I mean, that's gonna get pretty, like that 14th level when you got a pair of force ballistas going on. I can just see some shenanigans where like the Artificer takes the shove action. Both turrets shoot at the thing. The creatures move 15 feet off that cliff over there. You know, like.
Well, I actually.
Dang.
Do the mechanics work out like that? Because I got the vibe that you could have, like, it was more meant as a utility thing where you could have two different turrets at once, but they wouldn't, like, can you use a bonus action to make both of them fire?
Oh,
yes.
Yeah. Yep.
Interesting. I misread that.
Activate both turrets at the same time.
Yeah.
Well, that's pretty good.
Well, I think you need activating.
Oh yeah, it says it right there. I just missed that. Oh yeah, I definitely agree. I thought it should have been there, but
the biggest issue I'm gonna have with this, right, is the defender turret's so good. I think it's just too powerful. So many temp HP.
Well, it also, even if the defender turret is that good, the defender turret doesn't scale with a second turret, so then you can go like defender force.
True. Yep, that's right. You're absolutely correct.
It also it does kind of fall off the more damage enemies are doing. Like if you're at low health and it's doing and the enemy does 20 damage a hit, it doesn't really matter.
There's
that's true.
Yeah.
So yeah,
if you have the drop on the initiative, it's gonna be hard not to rationalize.
Oh yeah.
Unless you can just auto kill with like the push turret.
Is there anything else big in the class that any of you guys would like to talk about?
The many-handed pouch. Can we just talk about?
Yeah, I love the many-handed
incredible
pouch.
This infusion is. I'm just gonna zoom way in so everyone can see how this beautiful item.
The one thing I don't like about the pouch
so good.
is that it doesn't really spell out the interior sizes of the
It's a pouch.
What is that?
The same
said
capacity
anyway?
as a single pouch.
Okay, how is a pouch defined?
Yeah, it's like the heat paradox, right?
What is a pouch? No, it does actually give a difference to that under adventuring cube.
Okay, it is. Yeah.
Now, what that is does it actually say? It can hold up to 20 sling bullets, or 50 blowgun needles, among other things.
6 pounds of gear, or
1/5 of a cubic foot.
Yeah.
Or 6 pounds of gear. 6 pounds?
In a cubic?
And, like, there's so much you can do with it too. It's like the world's worst party, like the world's worst Rary's telepathic bond. Like,
oh yeah, dude. I see. Sorry, good.
I'm in a situation in a game where this would be the most useful thing ever, because several of us are in Vancouver, and one character is trapped in like Nairobi. So
wait, what?
It's a weird game.
Fair enough. I thought you were talking about in real life, but you said several of us are in Vancouver. No. Like, oh, so you play on Roll20? Like,
no. Several of us are in Vancouver. Effectively, the map is the world flipped on its side. One of us is in Tanzania, and he blew his arm off, and we need to get him a thing. And anyway, it's a whole thing.
Fair enough.
But the pouch would be really useful for just giving him the thing we want to give.
The thing about the many-handed pouch that blew me away, I just imagine like the Eberron post office just being a wall of many-handed pouches that they just go all over the world. It's just, you're just taking and putting things into pouches.
You have to have like what are they? What are the switchboards with pouches to just get your item to the right pouch? Yeah.
Exactly.
And here's a conundrum for you as well. I'm underwater. I open my pouch. Does everyone else have water just gushing out of their pocket until I somehow close the pouch?
Well, if you put it up to your mouth, maybe you have air.
Or could I breathe air from someone who's not underwater?
Fuck,
Yeah.
that's super. See, that's what I love about the Artificer in general. Is here's a thing, go crazy with it. Like in its own right, this isn't that powerful. It's how crazy you use it, and that is an awesome idea, Matty. I love that shit.
That
I
is really
live
cool.
for my players to do that kind of stuff. But that's why I love the many-handed pouch.
Other things, I would be remiss if I didn't mention a capstone, and this capstone is a doozy. It lets you attune to 6 items and gives you a bonus to all of your saves, equal the number of items you're attuned to. So at 20th level, you get 6 attunement slots, and realistically, a +6 to all of your saves.
Yeah, the Artificer is a god at 20th level with the right items.
Yeah,
Especially if you have a paladin pal. Oh, you want an extra like 6, 7 or more to your saves?
Well, I'm an Artificer. Can you roll a Wisdom saving throw? Okay. Well, I rolled a 2, so that's a 26.
Kind of, yeah. That's
just,
My
I
stone
have-
of good luck,
How
my
you-
cloak of protection, my ring of protection,
Staff of power.
staff of power.
I have my
Vecna's hand and eye.
gauntlets of ogre power, my belt of hill giant strength, and my hammer of thunderbolts, and a full attunement suite.
I'm attuned to the hand and eye of Vecna, the wand of Orcus, the sword of Kos. Don't ask about that one. And the list goes on. The books of Vile Darkness and Exalted Good, respectively. It's a great
Oh yeah,
thing.
+6 to death saving throws would be included.
Yeah, that's pretty busted.
You don't
Actually,
die
it's
anymore.
weird. It's actually, that's really funky. They call them death saving throws. I'm not sure they're actually saving throws. Something ticked me off the other day. They might just actually not be saving throws. I need to actually look at that. Sorry, minor minutia rules thing. Ignore
And
me.
as one last kind of like summary question, would you guys ever want to see the Artificer made official?
Yes, personally.
I think so.
yeah, probably in something like an equivalent of a player's handbook too, though, and not as a splash. Well, I mean, if they put it as a splash and adventure, that might contain it, quote unquote. But
Yeah.
I don't know. Like this could be showing some ankle that Eberron is going to get a hardcover print as it exists as a playtest right now. But if they do, I think that it should be its own sort of. Here are extra classes, or you have basic D&D 5th ed. Everyone's been playing it for a while. Here's advanced 5th ed, and so here are classes and spells that have more options and minutia as I guess as an option. To throw an idea out there.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea, because that was the thing that I was concerned about when I asked that question, because I was leaning more towards the side of no, where as much as I like this and would even want to play this, one of the things that's so great about 5e is how accessible it is, and throwing something like this into like the pool is scary, but like putting the label on it, like this is advanced Dungeons and Dragons, and obviously there's some stuff on it that would need to change and make it a little bit more, generally manageable. I think it could use some even the way it is, maybe tune it down a little bit to make it a little bit easier for newer players to understand. But I think putting the advanced tag on it would be definitely a great idea.
So one of the things that, like, I guess you said that was a wrap-up question, but here's the next wrap-up. Even in this playtest form, would you allow this played in your home games? Obviously, we're not talking about D&D time. This is not playable in D&D time. But like, I don't know about you guys. I would. I think it is in a playable state right now.
Yeah, group and setting dependent, obviously, but yeah.
Yeah. I want to see it play it. I want to do like some one shots at some point.
Yeah. I would even want to play it. Like,
Yeah, I want to play it. When I say I want to do one shots, I want to be the one playing it, not running.
Yeah, there we go. The truth comes out. What about you, Matty?
Well, when the first one came out, I actually I allowed a player to play with it. I did have to make some adjustments to the world to have this as a conception about why it would exist. I would be open-minded to it in a private game because I as the DM have a lot more control, and so I could help kind of not bend rules, but I can account for this being in the world. And if something seems overpowered, it's a lot easier if you just look at your friends and say, "Look, I'll allow this," because this is the conversation I had. I will allow Unearthed Arcana until we determine that it's detrimental or something else occurs, in which case we make this mutual contract among everyone at the table where we're going to give it a go. If it doesn't work, yes, as the DM, I'll ask you to switch classes. However, as a DM, I will allow you to, I'll give you that flexibility, because really it needs to be tested, and I can't just take something away without offering it in, an alternative of some kind in return. And so I would allow it out of curiosity to see how it works. I think this would combo very well, kind of with my comment. If you have a paladin in the group, oh my gosh, the artillerist and a paladin, this is going to be a phalanx. You're just going to get a group. Who cares if they're clustered? You're getting magic resistance to damage, or resistance to magic damage, and you're getting pluses to saves, and you're getting temp hit points off of the turrets. Why don't you just keep creeping up and advancing, or doing stuff like that? And so you could just have there's so many other tactics I think that you can do with this, and I think it brings a new, refreshing, if not complicated, twist to 5th Ed. Because this is going to be more difficult to account for a PC and a DM at your grid. But I think it'd be fun to try out.
And it's great that you mentioned that the paladin, because man, I forget about party comp. I haven't even begun to even imagine how on earth this class gets busted with feats or with multi-classing.
Yeah.
Oh my god! I just imagine there's a way to just destroy the game with this. I don't know it off the top of my head. The big thing is like the turrets don't scale. So once you have them, why do you keep going in the level? Why do you keep going in the class? You already have the turrets. They don't get any better with levels.
The defense one does a little bit.
You're in
only your spell attacks. Yeah.
So like, why ever? Why keep going? Why not just switch over to wizard? Have way more spell slots. Have all the same power of the turrets. I guess you don't go to level 14 where you get 2 turrets, but that's 11 levels of wizard you're getting for that second turret.
Well, the other thing that came out, if you multi-class warlock and you do have a force ballista. Can you imagine taking the invocation where you can push with your Eldritch Blast and then you're getting the force ballista? You're playing chess. You could move the enemies around. You could move different enemies. You could super push one enemy back. That being said, that could be a headache for DMs with their boss monsters. You want them to be up close and personal, and every turn, unless you're cheesing it as a DM, like, oh yeah, it's like a 20 AC at level 2 or something, or just something appropriate or inappropriate, I should say. Suddenly, it's really going to change the dynamic of your combats.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's definitely some thoughts there. My biggest concern is just there's not enough that you get. Not enough of this power is distributed over the whole class. There's a lot of very front-loaded oomph that if you don't care about the magic items, well.
Although
I like Shiva's comment in chat here. How can we make a bear and a turret kill things together? the Beastmaster Artificer, where you mount your turret on your animal.
Although its stat lineup isn't the best for multi-class. Intelligence, I mean, it's fine with wizard, but if con's good, but the intelligence is the bigger issue.
If you're Beastmaster, Beastmaster, you're Circle Moon Druid. Anyway.
Well, more my point is you gotta stat carefully if you want to multi with this.
Yep.
If you want your Artificer abilities to be effective,
meaningful. Yeah. But why don't we wrap it up about here? Do you guys have any last thoughts that you'd like to say about the Artificer?
I like it.
I'd like to see it played out.
Yeah, I definitely like to see
I'm
it.
cautiously optimistic.
Seems like we're on very similar pages here. So
Definitely a step up from the first iteration.
absolutely.
Well, I mean, more than just that, this is an Unearthed Arcana I've been excited about. And you know, in the past, like I guess since not Matoma Foes, Xanathar's guide came out, there haven't been a ton of Unearthed Arcanas that really excited me. And this one did. This one has. And I think this one's got a lot of cool potential. So
Xanathar's is what had my group set aside Unearthed Arcana and go back to like hardcover published only. Because it was excellent. It did a lot of stuff. And so we would discuss UA, but we would never employ it unless it was printed from there. So I'm glad that someone else out there had that same impression.
oh yeah, well after that, what did you need? Like you had there's an awesome playtesting period up to Xanathar's. Xanathar's comes out with just better, refined, clean versions of all the good Unearthed Arcana. Why would you futz around with more stuff? There's so much new, great stuff to play with. And I feel like this is definitely in that right direction of new, great stuff on the horizon. Unlike the first Artificer.
Yeah.
Shots fired.
I don't remember a lot about it. But
It was weird.
It was overly genericized in the worst way.
I also remember reading it through and having the thought, like, oh, you could destroy this with multi-classing, which maybe it was less intended to as well. But Jeremy, shall we move on now to our segment, Ask Pete and Jeremy?
Well, before we do that, just want a quick extra thank you, Crowley, Farfel13 Crowley, and MattyMorgs. Matty, thank you guys for being with us tonight and for helping to, and for discussing the Artificer with us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
That's always great. Now let's ask some Pete and Jeremy's.
These are Ask Pete and Jeremy, but also Ask Crowley and Matty. If you guys have answers to these, I'd love to hear them as well, because we got some funny ones tonight. A lot of jokey ones tonight. But I think this first one's serious. From Anik Shiba, how often do people in your games kill mission critical NPCs?
Let's start with you guys, our guests. How often in your games do your players kill mission critical NPCs?
I don't think I've ever had someone kill a mission critical NPC. I think I've almost accidentally killed my own mission critical NPCs, but I don't think I've ever had a player do it. Tom might have. There's a decent chance at that.
I've had it. I can't say I've had the players kill an NPC, though I've been very blessed, I suppose, to not have very bloodthirsty players. When in my meta, when I run a campaign, I run it for like a year and a half, and we go the full way. It's storytelling and all that. Though through action or maybe more of inaction, NPCs have died because of things that the players could have controlled. So maybe that's kind of a roundabout, but I can't say I've had them purposely like destroy a mission critical NPC.
I've had players like in my last campaign, I had two different players that were always on the opposite side of we should murder this NPC, and I really like this NPC. And
Did we kill any of those mission critical NPCs?
You didn't kill them, but some of them were effectively killed. They were just like the player conflict and the character conflict was so great that it was like we're just never going to interact with them, so they're just effectively dead.
In my case,
somewhat frequently.
In my case, I think the answer is no, because I don't think I've ever put. I've learned enough to not put any NPC that you just cannot afford to lose in front of your players. Like even like one that I had I've lost ones that I've had big plans for. Like Jeremy once sent the leader of like a resistance to hell that I did not expect. But I mean, that was a character that it was okay for him to be
that
lost.
was such a good moment.
It was so cool, nothing mission critical that like destroyed the plot, or the ability for them to like complete whatever adventure they were on or anything.
Face of Jericho asks, are your guys' deepest fears still of sharks? I can just start with this one. I used to be terrified of sharks and spiders, and while I still don't like sharks and spiders, my new greatest fear is something bad happening to my poor cat.
Oh,
I won't swim in the ocean. There's sharks here now. There are great whites off of the coast of Massachusetts.
that's
No,
terrifying.
I'm good. I'm set. We get
well,
seals here.
I live right on Lake Erie, so I don't have to worry about that. Although growing up when I was in Florida, we had an aquarium that specialized in sharks, so I always found them fascinating.
Well, sharks are cool. They're just terrifying.
Wicked cool. Yeah, they are terrifying.
My fear is, I don't think my fear is never afraid of sharks. I'm afraid of poison. That's how I don't want to die, is by poison. I
like Vasilzeju in chat. What about spider sharks? Yeah, I think those would just be so weird that they'd be cool though.
Well, that implies they can come on land.
Oh yeah.
Which land sharks with 8 legs are. That's
next
a nightmare.
Yeah, I was gonna say, next question is from Sheba. What is your favorite lyrical song? And I think there's a couple ways to interpret this. I don't know if it means like a song with lyrics or your favorite lyrics in a song.
I think it's song with lyrics. And I don't think Dies Irae counts.
It doesn't feel like it should. I have a fast answer to this. My favorite song is Ramble On by Led Zeppelin. It's my favorite song.
I don't know if I have an answer to this because I don't really listen to a lot of music, or at least music that has words to it. I'm not hip to the hippity hoppity and the pop.
I listen to a lot of lyrical music, not even for the lyrics, but just like I am a fan of pop.
I loved trashy pop music for a while, but
I went through a phase as well.
I don't think I have an answer on a favorite. There's too many songs I like.
Name a song you like, Crowley.
I mean, Country Roads.
Fair enough.
It's a good song. I don't know. I think for me, because I don't like listen to a lot of lyrical music anymore, it's gotta be whatever like ironic pop / edgy mashup is currently like the most newest.
What is
like
it?
Rage Against Vanessa Carlton,
yeah, exactly.
I think currently is there, but like Call Me a Hole, also very good.
Oh, I know that
there
one.
There are a handful of other ones, but yeah, Rage Against Vanessa Carlton was very good.
So our next question, I believe it's directed specifically at Crowley. Who is your waifu?
I don't have a waifu.
There you go.
There it is.
What? And then actually the real question from Reflected today, what is the wildest plot line you had to make up on the fly as the PCs completely ignore what you had prepared? I don't fucking know.
I mean,
there's been some wild stuff, but
yeah.
And those are the harder ones to remember too, because
I have one.
They're just like, you're not encoding the memory. You're just like flying so much by the seat of your pants. Everything's like streaming in and out of your consciousness while you try to move somewhere you're more comfortable. Crowley, start us off.
I ran this campaign that was on like the New World sort of jungle continent. Jeremy was in this campaign, and I had set things up, and I expected them to just go into the jungle. And there was this side quest that had been set up earlier that they just didn't seem like they were engaging with at all. And then out of nowhere, they're like, "We're gonna do this," and I was like, "Okay, all right." And so they go to this other town, and it spirals into this weird thing with these German, because all of the colonies on this new world,
the German mafia.
Yeah, it was like German mafia,
but devil worshipping mafia,
something like that. and it just spirals into this whole thing where they have to get information from the German mafia, and they end up meeting the German mafia boss, and he makes some sort of soul binding deal with someone, and then they have to go kill some elves. That was probably the weirdest direction, because I was just like, I was so unprepared for them to actually engage with
That it was like months later.
Yeah. And it was just like,
we had found some dude's really fancy ring on his disembodied arm inside of a giant turtle we killed months earlier, and then abruptly decided to go and return it.
Sounds like D&D to me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's I have to be along the same lines where there's been a couple times where I think I'm playing like super efficient 4D chess, the plot's coming together, and suddenly the party comes up with a viable solution that's even very simple and elegant that I never considered. And there's, in good faith to the party, there's no reason to just deny them that really awesome idea. And so it caused a big rewrite. In fact, the most recent time that happened was the conclusion of, again, another one of these like 1.5 year long campaigns. We're right at the end game. Everything is coming to a head. A big disaster is going to occur. And they decided to effectively make something like a fallout shelter. So instead of like engaging the big bad evil guy or choosing a side in the oncoming war, they spent a bunch of downtime and created a vault of a sort. Or it was more of an arc. They actually kind of broke a chunk of Earth off and kind of floated it away from where everything was happening.
That's cool.
But I never considered that. I never considered they would just sort of like hunker down and bug out of there. And so I allowed it to happen. And so the epic conclusion to this campaign was they just sort of played Noah's Ark with people from all around the area. They broke off this piece of land, floated it away, and they allowed me to conclude what happened in the world as it would naturally happen without any PC influence. And so when I started the next campaign, the world was interesting. Like I had to think about what impact would this now have as they release the agency of the finality of the story back to me as the DM. That was so unsuspecting to have that happen. And then when we picked up, X years later, they landed their little arc. The survivors were coming back out into this completely reformed world off of the consequences of this great, battle and clash of forces. And what happened? It was definitely not what I had planned.
No plan survives first contact with the players.
Jeremy, do you have one?
Yeah, I do. It was in the most recent Crucible. It was my most recent campaign.
You sound sad.
Well, like the campaign just began, and it was like, oh, it's got all this tension, and it's like, all right, they got to keep fleeing south for whatever, and they come. So things are really dour. It's very dark, and so I want to have this very goofy part where there's like a little town, a little society, and they build golems and they fight with them, and they go to this big veritable magical like capital to the south, and that's where they fight with their golems every year is their thing. And so I was like, it'll be just a fun little thing for the players to to do. They'll play in this golem fight thing, and it'll be a good kind of weight off their shoulders because I just destroyed their entire hometown. I'm sorry, not me, the bad thing did. And some of the players were pretty upset about that. They're pretty down because that was maybe a mistake on my part. Well, but then they met a wizard there, and the wizard's like, "Yeah, I'm going home." They're like, "We're gonna go with you."
Well,
we just met.
Hold on.
And so you teleported to the opposite side of the world.
We found the one super depressing thing in the town, which was the sword that drove the blacksmith's wife crazy until he finally killed her, and then one of our players attuned to the sword and started becoming basically undead, and we're like, well, we gotta fix this. And this wizard guy is like, I'm gonna go over here. I'm gonna go over here where there's powerful wizards, and we're like, well, they sound like they could help. So we went to the other side of the world.
I guess that's it. It's putting an obviously super cursed magic item in front of your players. Sometimes they'll just attune to it.
Yeah.
And that always just makes things beautiful. Anywho. That's my answer.
Uh,
Is that it? Are we good? Is that everyone?
I got one,
Oh,
if I may.
you may. I'll let you.
Thank you. I have just to keep it brief. I had a party go stop a bank robbery and decide that they were just going to take over the bank robbery and rob the bank themselves, and then end off rich. Yeah, they were like there to. They literally got hired to stop a bank robbery, and then halfway through, they saw like, wow, these guys had a great plan. We can take it ourselves. And then they just walked off and like ran into the forest. But like some of them got downed, and like the town guard came in. So there was this like. It basically ended with like one of them had all the money and was like floating down the river on a makeshift raft. One of them was like captured by the town guard, and then two of them had just like scattered off into the forest in different directions. And so like this was like the second session of a game, and like everyone was all over the map at that point. And that was definitely there was a lot of subsequent improvisation and odd plot lines that were put into play in order to get everyone kind of back together. So that was a fun one.
That sounds amazing. Well, everyone, that ends our segment. Ask Pete and Jeremy and Crowley and Matty. So with that, thank you everyone for hanging out, for stopping by. We hope you enjoyed this little, I guess, round table, so to speak. Not really round, square table.
Square table,
about the Artificer. And hopefully you guys, these our opinions and our thoughts on this are helpful to you all.
Yeah, and thanks so much, Matty and Crowley, for hanging out, for talking with us, for joining us. Excuse me, as we go a little bit later than usual. It's been it was a lot of fun talking with you guys about the Artificer tonight.
It was a blast.
Yeah.
Thank you for inviting me.
And me.
Crowley, do you have anything you want to plug?
We don't have Waterdeep this week, right?
Nope. We got Waterdeep the Sunday after next.
Okay. Well, I'll be on DnDTime probably.
Fair enough. Matty, do you want to tell people about your stream and your community? Are you streaming tonight?
Yes, I will be streaming a little later tonight. We do a lot of workshop, similar to what we do here, although it's more of a solo. I enjoy these sort of heads-up conversations, and so this was very refreshing. The majority of what we do is workshop, or we'll make characters. We'll look at Unearthed Arcanas, or we'll build something thematic. We try and challenge ourselves by keeping as much random as possible, and then draw connections from all of these random elements that we make for a character or a setting. We'll make maps and dungeons and talk about stuff like that to try and cause inspiration, and for people to realize that even with the core 3 books, which is really what we stick to the majority of the time, even with the core 3 books, there's so much you can do, and you can never have the same character twice. So as for what we're doing tonight and this week, I haven't quite decided yet. Maybe I'll draw some inspiration off what we've done here, and maybe we can make a party of artificers. And so while the class and subclass for all the characters, we'll make 4 or 5 of them over the course of the week. Those might be the same, but we're going to have the individuals. We'll focus on who the characters are and maybe express them as some sort of like a military unit, a special forces, something like that. And it'll allow for a deeper delve into Artificer, while also making sure that we're focusing on the characters and who they are and how they would employ this and that. We might even be able to use our first 2 characters we made last week as an inspiration, or to include them in somehow. And then on Tuesdays, we role play. So a few members of the community, I've been running a game for them now for about 6 months. A lot of fun. It's ongoing, and I'd welcome all of you to stop by on Tuesdays around 11 o'clock p.m. Eastern to join us for that.
And the party of artificers sounds like an absolute blast to put together. I'm looking forward to seeing that myself.
Well, everyone, with that, don't forget to tune in to Pete and Jeremy's DnDTime this Friday. We're going to be running 3 1-hour adventures, 1.5-hour adventures featuring you. Should be a lot of fun. I'm not sure what we've got in store for this week, but I'll figure that out tomorrow morning when the signups all close. So yeah, thanks for stopping by, everyone. We will see you around. I'm Jeremy.
I'm Pete.
I'm MattyMorgs.
I'm Crowley.
And this is
And this is DnDTime Talks.
Nicely done, guys. Nicely
Good night,
done.
everyone.
D&D time tradition. Good night.
Bye-bye.